Rolling it. Mercosur splits dampen EU outlook for trade deal as window narrows by Anthony Boadle, Philip Blenkinsop. Jeez, that's a difficult name. Philip Blenkinsop. Again, the title Mercosur splits dampen EU outlook for what? For trade deal as the window narrows. This is from Brasilia and Brussels by Reuters. You can find the link in the description. Here we go. Splits within South American trade bloc Mercosur have dampened hopes in the European Union of a trade deal, which could fall apart if it does not get done by the end of the year, diplomats and members of the European Parliament told Reuters, the news uh, publication. Two of Mercosur's 4 countries have yet to reply to an addendum in which Brussels included environmental safeguards to address reservations by many EU member states, diplomats said. EU negotiators have been waiting for a reply since March. I'm reading this in September. Many had hoped for a swift conclusion to the trade deal under President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who overhauled Brazil's environmental policies to protect the Amazon rainforest since taking office this year. But that hope has since fizzled. It has deflated like a balloon, said Austrian MEP Thomas Weitz, a critic of the agreement who recently visited Brazil. He said Lula's comments on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, blaming both sides for the war, have contributed to Europeans' disenchantment. Differences between Brazil and Uruguay on their response to the EU, plus a change of government in Paraguay, have delayed a joint Mercosur reply on the so-called side letter, diplomats said. They said there would not be another negotiating round until the EU receives a joint Mercosur response. And that is all. That is all for the reading. The article is longer. Again, you can find the link posted in the description. Você pode encontrar a leitura na descrição. Normalmente eu postar o link e o texto o texto, né? Coming up next segment, vocab. We break down the vocab. We don't do all of it, but we can do a lot of it. So if you're not so interested in picking up or slowing down to get new vocab, skip to the end where you will have questions and conversation. And also in the description, you will see some activities that you can do to practice, right? Some people maybe just listen to this. Some people maybe are trying to focus and practice and do activities. So you will now have activities at the end, but let's go on to the vocabulary in this next segment. Here we go. Rolling it. Let's make this bigger, right? We're not going to do this too fast, but we're going to try and do this fast because, well, there's a lot. Mercosur splits. In the title, splits. Well, Mercosur, right? Most people, I believe, are Brazilian who listen to this or watch this, but Mercosur is the trading bloc, is the group of countries who are like OTAN, like NATO, making trade deals together with other nations or other trading blocs, like the EU. Splits, splits. Mercosur splits. Split could be a noun or a verb or an adjective, but we're going to use it as a noun because it's used as a noun in this example. Splits means divisions, divisões, divisions, differences of opinion or belief, or fractures, discordos, right? People on 2 different sides of a topic. In this case, how to communicate or what to communicate with the European Union. Dampen, a verb, an en verb. There's a lot. harden, lighten, dampen, whiten, widen, heighten. Did I say heighten? There's a big group of verbs in English that are difficult for you, Brazilian language learners. Why? Because they're Old English, Germanic origin words. They're not from the Latin. Um, they're not of Latin origin, so they don't look or sound the same. I don't know how to say dampen in Portuguese, but let's. What does it mean in English? To dampen something, or dampen an outlook, or dampen your perspective. An outlook. No, spoiler alert, outlook means your perspective for the future specifically. Dampen would mean to not be confident, to make less intense, to reduce, diminish, to damage even. Prejudicar, right? So this is a negative thing. This is when something, um, when you're looking towards the future, or when you're thinking about something, or the likelihood, the probability that something will happen, when hopes are dampened, when outlooks are dampened, when perspectives are dampened, um, forecasts are dampened, it means that they're getting weaker. They're not getting stronger. They're damaged. Outlook, like we said, outlook does, in fact, I didn't put it in the vocab section. Outlook means your look outward, your look for the future. I think Microsoft has a calendar program called Microsoft Outlook. It's a calendar. You don't look backward in the calendar, you look forward. Um, Trade deal window narrows, to narrow, to get smaller. The window. I don't think this is so different in Portuguese. A janela, the time window. We talk about a window for something happening means there is a possible stretch, or moment of time where something is possible. In this case, it's the possibility of a trade deal, and it's narrowing, it's getting smaller. What else do we have? Splits, dampen. To fall apart, falhar, disintegrar. The trade deal could fall apart. Poderia falhar em breve. Could disintegrate, it could fail soon. Addendum. They talk about an addendum, right? The EU has made an addendum to the original agreement that was not agreed upon, but the original proposal. And what is the addendum? The addendum is, hey, environment, you need to be doing some things. X, epsilon, Z, X, Y, Z. You need to be doing some things. You need to agree to do some things regarding the environment, because you get some people in office politically, like a Bolsonaro, who don't protect the environment. So we want some assurances. We want some confidence, right? Written agreement that you will protect it. So an addendum, I don't know the word, probably the same in Portuguese, because I think addendum is Latin, but addendum is a attachment, a special, specific additional item at the end of a document, usually about other details in the document. In this case, it's hey, the things in the document? Well, we need another condition related to those things. And it's about the environment. Swift, not the store for frozen meat. Não é a loja para carne congelada. Swift is fast. They hoped, the European Union, hey, Lula got elected. Okay, maybe this means we're going to have a end to the long negotiation. Maybe we're going to have a swift conclusion. Fast, rapida, veloz. To overhaul. One word, to overhaul. Lula overhauled Brazil's environment policies. To overhaul is to make substantial systemic changes, not small changes, not surgical changes. No, revisar substancialmente, consideravelmente, to make substantial systemic changes. Lula made some systemic, substantial changes. He did overhaul some environmental policies after he was in office. To fizzle, they said that hope has fizzled. Hope has fizzled. To diminish, to decrease, to lose momentum. Fracassar, diminuir, vazar. In this case, right, what's fizzling? Hope, esperança, tá diminuindo, vazando, fracassando. To blame, blaming both sides, to blame, blaming, and this is about Lula coming to office. Hey, we think that there's going to be a swift or fast conclusion. Great, we got Lula now. Let's do it. Oh, wait a minute. Lula's talking about a big topic that's important to Europe and the world, but especially Europe. And he's talking about it in a way that the Europeans, at least Western European, most Europeans actually at this point, did not like. And what was it? He was culpando, he was blaming both sides for the Russian war in Ukraine. And to blame is to culpar, to attribute culpability, culpability, culpabilidade. Hmm, very similar. I like that. But we don't have culpability as a as a verb. Right? We don't have culpar, to culp someone. No, we have to blame. But we do have the noun culprit. Someone who is culpado is a culprit in English. You can call, and we do use that word, the culprit. Who was the culprit? Who did it? Who's responsible? Who do we blame? To blame, culpar. Disenchantment. Disenchantment. And this is about, hey, the Europeans have experienced a disenchantment. Loss of magic, loss of interest, loss of charm. Desencanto. Desencanto. To delay. To delay. O conselho de todo advogado defensor de uma culpado, uma acusado, é o que você deveria fazer se você não tem evidência que vai te ajudar. Delay, delay, delay. Atrasar, atrasar, atrasar. Some things have delayed a joint or unified Mercosur response. And so again, to delay is to push back, to postpone, to not be on time, atrasar. So-called, the so-called side letter about the environment. This was at the end of the story, right? A long sentence. They're talking about Brazil and Uruguay, talking about also Paraguay, and this is about, hey, why did Mercosur not respond yet to the EU asking about the environment issue? And one of the reasons is, well, Brazil and Uruguay have a difference of opinion. Eles não estão acordando, não estão de acordo e como dar resposta. E Paraguay tem governo novo. And the so-called letter. So what does so-called means? It means supposed, or we use so-called quando estamos falando com dúvida sobre alguma coisa, particularmente o nome, right? So a so-called letter is, a letter that has some dispute, has some contention, right? Maybe, and I believe as pessoas no América do Sul, no Mercosul, particularmente Lula, estava criticando essa carta, essa addendum, né? Eu não sei outros países também, mas ele estava criticando essa letra. Então, quando alguma coisa, o nome tem dúvida, ou tem contention, ou tem disputa, usamos isso, so-called, como adjetivo, para indicar que o nome mesmo, o que é, is disputado, is disputed, is doubted, or com dúvida. That's all we got for vocab. We're going to move on now to questions and conversation about the topic, about trade deals, about Mercosur in our final segment. And again, I want to remind you, you can find an exercise or activities, plural, at the end in the description for this channel. But coming up next, questions and conversation. Questions. Let's kick off the questions. What are some of your thoughts about Mercosur? or Mercosur, depending on what country in South America you're in, I guess. But what are some of your thoughts about Mercosur? Ok, são alguns dos seus pensamentos sobre o Mercosur. What are some of my thoughts about Mercosur? I like Mercosur. I live in Brazil. I live in Sao Paulo. I I work here. I make the real. So I prefer Mercosur to be strong. And smart. I prefer Mercosur to represent um, South Americans in the group, of course. I expect it to make a trade deal with. I expect it to benefit Brazilian people, of which my daughter is one. Minha filha é brasileira. Mãe dela é brasileira. Família dela, excuse me, brasileira. Eu, brasileiro, não, mas eu moro aqui. Minha casa está aqui. Eu estou investindo eu mesmo no Brasil. So I hope that Mercosur is successful. I hope that they do find leverage or poder relativo de unir os países americanos do Sul e utilizar esse poder de negociar junto como OTAN, como Estados Unidos, como China. But I don't want Mercosur to be filled with, you know, BRICS countries. I don't think that that's smart. I don't think these are different things. I know BRICS and Mercosur are different. I hope they stay different because Mercosur should in fact be for the interests of countries that are South American. Why? Because that's how you know that the people on your team have the same interests as you. They have the same experiences as you, the same, more or less, environments, the same geography relative to the other places in the world. So, some of my thoughts. I hope that Mercosur is smart and intelligent and successful and aggressive when they need to be. Yeah, fuck the EU and NATO if it means Mercosur is going to get a bad deal. No, fuck that. I'm in. What are your thoughts, your hopes, your doubts, your expectations about a deal between Mercosur and the EU? O que são suas esperanças, pensamentos, dúvidas, esperanças sobre uma negociação, sobre acordo entre Mercosur e a União Europeia? My thoughts are, my hopes are, I hope they make a deal, but I hope that they make a good deal, right? A good deal is better than a bad deal. And South America usually gets the bad deal. So, especially when you're dealing with the United States or the European Union. So, I hope they make a good deal for South America. Um, they mentioned an addendum, so-called letter about the environment. I also hope that South America and the governments here take care of the environment. Um, it's hard in a negotiation to know exactly what does the other side want. And if you know, se você pode saber de verdade ou com confiança o que o outro lado quer, você pode negociar melhor. So, does the European Union care more about prices and about the economics of this deal? And are they eles estão usando o ambiente para negociar preço, detalhes, condições melhor para eles? Ou se eles estão de verdade preocupados com o ambiente mesmo no América do Sul e no mundo inteiro? So I have my doubts, right? I hope they make a good deal. I hope the Brazilians and the South Americans protect the environment. But if the European Union is trying to use the environment as a negotiating tool, uma ferramenta de negociação, eu esperaria que o Mercosur pode perceber isso e não ser vítima do seu próprio ambiente, né? So, how do you distribute blame for the failure of Mercosur and the EU to make a deal? Como você distribuir a culpabilidade pela falha de Mercosur e a União Europeia para fazer um acordo até agora, né? Porque talvez amanhã eles façam um acordo, mas faz uma década, eu acho 10 anos mais ou menos que ele está falando e negociando. So how do you distribute blame? I distribute blame on probably at least part on Mercosur. Not Mercosur necessarily the trading bloc, but the individual countries, right? Individual countries have individual domestic politics, and domestic politics change, or they can change your participation in the international political scene. So Bolsonaro and Lula, very different people, very different politics. Um, Same with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. You know, the way NATO, OTAN, pôde operar sob Donald Trump ou sob a presidência do Joe Biden é diferente. And we had, dificuldade como acordo de material nuclear com o Irã e o bloquinho de países europeus e Estados Unidos. That was a difficult negotiation because the president was changing. Obama made a deal. Trump decided, I don't like it. So that makes it difficult. And the EU is the same. The EU has internal domestic politics that make things difficult to do collectively. Um, how do you distribute the blame, the responsibility for the failure of Mercosur and the EU to make a deal? Most famous splits of all time, Brad and Angelina, right? Or Brad and Jennifer Aniston. Famous split. Any other famous splits, business splits? Any famous business splits? Now, usually the famous business deals are uh, mergers, right? Coming together. But famous splits? Kobe and Shaq. Kobe and Shaq, the Lakers. Kobe and Shaq, very famous split. In Brazil, are there any famous splits that I culturally, I'm stupid. So in Brazil, I know some things. I have some connection to the past in Brazil, but not really. So famous Brazilian splits. Who split up? Who divided? Who broke up? How do you consider? Oh, let me say that in Portuguese. As divisões mais famosas de todo o tempo no Brasil. Most famous splits in Portuguese. How much do you consider the environment when thinking about the economy? O quanto você considerar o ambiente quando você está pensando sobre a economia? Quando você está voltando, ou só pensando, ou refletindo sobre a economia? How much, quanto você considerar o ambiente? I do it a lot because I think they're very connected. When I'm thinking about the environment, maybe I'm not thinking about oil and gasoline. I don't drive a car and I don't live in an oil producing area, right? My parents aren't oil in the oil industry, so I don't think about it like that. But I think that look, I'm scared because of the environment frequently with nightmares, pesadelos. So it is something that I think we can't ignore, even if the economy is something that is a risk factor, right? I think, uh, you know, the environment is an opportunity too. I'm from California. California has lots of business ventures because of changing the economy based on the changing environment. I have a good friend, eu tenho amigo bom que estava, faz 10 anos no passado, ele estava andando rua para rua vendendo solar panels. Por quê? Porque o governo da Califórnia estava com um plano para recomprar a energia que você pode produzir e você pode ganhar dinheiro, um dinheirinho e até você pode diminuir os seus gastos em energia, né? California is a place that is progressive with the economy and the environment, and using the environment to improve or boost the economy. So, how much do I consider? A lot. and I don't think that they should be considered separately. I think that it's an opportunity, and if we are honest about the environment and the direction it's going, yeah, it's no decision. You have to consider it, and you have to 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 be innovative. How might Brazil's make this bigger because we're at the end and this part is oh, how might Brazil's interests be different than other Mercosur nations? I don't know much about this. Como os interesses do Brasil pode ser diferente que os outros nações no Mercosul? How might Brazil's interests be different than Uruguay, Paraguay? I think is it Colombia, the other country in there? I actually don't know the fourth country. Is it Venezuela or Colombia? But how are the interests of Brazil, a Mercosur country, different than other Mercosur countries? And they mentioned in the article, they mentioned that there are differences, at least between Brazil and Uruguay. The article was a bit longer, but I didn't see what the differences were. What are the differences? And when they say differencias, they mean differences of opinion, differences on how to respond to the environmental letter that the EU mentioned. Hey, we need to write something in this deal about the environment because we're nervous. Ou porque eles querem negociar acordo melhor para eles e não para Mercosul. That is all, though. That's where we're stopping. Again, you can find the link in the reading in the description. Descrição você pode encontrar a leitura. Thank you for watching and or listening.